As I'm reading R.C. Sproul's 1977 book, Knowing Scripture. I think parts of it are interesting and valid, such as when he says we have a duty to study Scripture. That's based on Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 10. But he bases the Reformed principles of private interpretation as a reaction to the fact that the Catholic Church persecuted and even put people to death for reading the Bible. Is this historically accurate?
Okay, thanks. That is a gross misstatement of the way in which the nature of biblical reading and biblical authority have gone down, both within the Presbyterian or Reformed tradition, the Calvinist tradition to which Sproul himself belongs, and the Catholic tradition. So the Catholic Church is the institution that gave us the Bible. You can thank the Church for the Bible. You want to read a great book on it, you read Where We Got the Bible, Our Debt to the Catholic Church by Henry Graham. And the Catholic Church is the institution that began the translation of the Bible from the original languages, Greek, Hebrew, into the languages of Western Europe, most importantly Latin, which of course that's a translation of the Bible into the vernacular of the Roman Empire, as well as various Saxon dialects and Frankish and French and the European, the Romance languages and all the rest of it down through the centuries, and even those early English translators of the Bible that are sometimes hailed as forerunners of the Reformation, like Wycliffe, they're working from older ecclesiastical English translations. So, the idea that the Catholic Church is somehow against the laity knowing the Bible is just kind of absurd, and has always, in fact, the Bible has been at the heart of the Church's prayer life from the get-go. The praying of the Psalms, the Liturgy of the Hours, a part of the Benedictine tradition has been there. We're praying the Psalms 7 times a day, since the time of the apostles. Yeah. Now, is it also the case, or is it the case, I should ask, that within the Presbyterian tradition or the Reformed tradition or the Calvinist tradition, that it's, open season on the Bible, everybody read the Bible, do what you want with it, private interpretation? Absolutely not. That is not the way the thing shook out in Geneva, Switzerland under John Calvin. What you find is that in the 14th century, in the 15th century with the invention of printing, that the accessibility of religious literature goes way up, and the market is 100% Catholic, of course, in the 1450s, 1460s, 1470s. And so there's this explosion of religious literature, and that includes access to the Bible, and that's the context in which the Reformation happens. And when John Calvin shows up on the scene and writes his first edition of the Institutes in 1536, from that point till his death in 1564, the thing that he contended with most in his career was how does he rein in Protestants who read the Bible on their own and come to interpretations different from John Calvin's. And I write about this a good deal in my research, and there's a character by the name of Jerome Bolsick. And I think Bolsick is emblematic. He's not the only one, but it's just a beautiful illustration of what was going on in Protestantism. Bolsick shows up in Geneva, goes to a Bible study, hears the Calvinist minister give out a very Calvinistic interpretation of the doctrine of predestination, and Bolsick says, I don't think that's biblical, and argues the case from his own reading of the Bible. And whereupon Calvin promptly has Bolsick put in prison and tries to have him executed.
Wow.
Okay. And we've got the archival records. We have the court records of Bolsick's conversation. And Bolsick asks for the right to have a theological dialogue with Calvin about the theological issue under discussion. And in that appeal, he says, do I not have the Spirit? And is it not the right of every Christian to read the Bible and, guided by the Spirit, to come to an understanding of what it means, and then to defend that from the text directly? Or do we have to kowtow to what John Calvin says the Bible means? And in that context, the answer was you have to kowtow to what John Calvin means. And he was never given that form, and Calvin never endorsed the idea that laity could read the Bible on their own and make up their own mind about what it meant. When he preached the Bible alone, what he meant was, all you poor benighted lay people who have been abused by the Catholic Church, now you get to hear the pure teaching of the Word from me. But it was still a very authoritarian view of one's relationship to the Bible.
Sure.
And I've read gazillions of pages of Calvin. Almost never, I came up with one instance, but almost never does Calvin recommend to people that they take the Bible and read it on their own. What he recommends that they do is join themselves to a congregation where they can hear the word preached by a properly ordained minister, or if they're going to read the Bible, to read it accompanied by the kind of devotional manuals and practices that he exhorts them to use. So guided again by his interpretation. And that history of persecuting dissent within Protestantism goes back from the 16th century and runs up, all the way into the great awakenings of the 18th century. I mean, there's no consensus within Protestantism that you can just read the Bible and make up your own mind about what it means up until really, the 19th century is when this kind of egalitarian view of religion begins. Has the Catholic Church opposed heretical interpretation of the Bible? You bet. All right. But the story's a lot more complicated than that simplistic depiction.
There you go. Thank you so much for your